Hello, and welcome to the Divorced Dadvocate, divorce support for dads, where we help dads create a healthy and less traumatic divorce. My name is Jude Sandoval, and I'm your host. I created this podcast and the Divorced Advocate community as a result of my own high conflict divorce, and because you as a dad deserve all the resources necessary to thrive through this challenging time. I encourage you to check out our website at thedivorcedadvocate.com, where there are resources that correspond to this episode, as well as free access to our membership community, where you will find live meetings, free workshops and courses, private discussion groups, and more. And now, on to this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the show. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And I'm extremely excited because I got a couple of guys that I just love chatting with. You've heard them on the show here before. I've had the pleasure of appearing on their show a couple of times as well. And they're going to be sharing a little bit about what they are talking about at the M.E.N Summit that is coming up on August 24th. This is the third group that, or not group, these guys are a group. The last two that we're on are also going to be at that summit, but they're going to share a little bit about what they're talking about on that day. But before we get into that, let me just welcome a couple of new members to the Divorced Advocate community. That is Ryan and Zach. Welcome, Ryan and Zach. If you are not part of the community yet, check out the divorcedadvocate.com. We've got all the tools and resources that you need, that you deserve in getting through and thriving through your divorce. Check it out at thedivorcedadvocate.com and become a member. So my guests today don't need an introduction because they don't have an introduction, but you've heard them before. They're both accomplished speakers. They're both accomplished authors. And if you've tuned into their show, the Mad Men of Masculinity on KLDC 1220 AM in Denver, you've heard them, or you may have also heard them on any one of the major podcast platforms that you're listening on. Welcome, Kirk Samuels and Jason Kendrick.
My guy, how you doing, Jude?
Mm-hmm. Gentlemen, I'm doing well, and I truly am excited to have you guys on. I know I love talking to you guys on the show, off show, when we're doing events and other stuff together. For those listening, Jason and Kirk are both here in the Denver metro area. So we've got kind of a group of guys, and we do a lot of events and stuff together. So I know these guys well, and they're just phenomenal quality guys, which is why they are talking at this M.E.N Summit coming up on August 24th from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. here in Parker, Colorado. And let me just remind the audience what the M.E.N Summit is. Masculine Empowerment Network fosters healthy masculinity across communities and families through honest dialogue and mutual encouragement. And this event is going to examine men's issues and work towards solutions without political, religious, financial, or personal agendas. Men's challenges have never been greater than now, but great things happen when men rise up to lead their families and communities. You're on this planet for a purpose, and you are not alone. And this comes just in alignment with what we talk about here on the show with the dads, that it is important and it is imperative that as dads, they are leading their families and their children. So, and I know you guys subscribe to this as well. But before we get into each of your respective talks, do us a favor and just remind us a little bit about you guys' background. Jason, you want to start?
Sure. Well, I'm Jason B. Kendrick. Grew up an Army bred, Air Force veteran, done all kinds of different day jobs and whatnot. And I'm an author, speaker, coach, obviously radio personality and podcaster with my main man, Kirk here. And as we move through life as men, we tend to need to teach what we're going through. I think a lot of times is the best way to embody it and master it. And so a lot of what Kirk and I talk about are things we've gone through ourselves. And so it's not just spitballing or coming up with, something just to say. It's usually experience. And, a lot of times people ask us how we come up with our content or how we come up with our topics. Like, well, we pretty much go, what's going on today? Then let's talk about that. So that's how we do that. And I had a question. I mean, I've not been divorced, but can I still be a part of the crew? Can I join the Divorced Advocates?
Yeah, it just proves that you're smarter than the rest of us. So we
Not about
welcome
that. Not
smarter
about that.
people. I welcome smarter people than myself on the show. So yeah, absolutely. So and your guys' show is awesome because there's so much noise out there right now around masculinity, and what I appreciate in any time that I'm tuning in and listening to you guys is that you're just having real dialogue and real conversation. Like you said, like what came up. It might have been something that we were talking about at one of our events. I hear you guys talk about, or in your lives, or in whatever it is, and it's real and it's authentic. So anybody that is listening that hasn't listened, check it out. Because it's just really good, and the men and women too. I think you have on the show because there's a lot of misconceptions around healthy femininity and healthy masculinity, and so I really appreciate
Yeah,
what
we
you
we
guys
try to
do.
promote as many women as we can, and ironically, when we first started the podcast, our analytics showed that the majority of our audience were women 35 to 55. So
Wow.
I've come up with my own justifications for why that is, but I think it was just a matter of ladies trying to finally decide they want to listen to men about healthy men and what men want and need versus their moms and girlfriends.
Yeah, well, and the guys listening to to this podcast, and the guys by and large that you've met and been involved with my group, they all love women, right? Even though they're going through a difficult and challenging time and might have a difficult and challenging soon to be ex or ex-wife, I would say 99% of them are still wanting to have a healthy and functioning relationship with a woman. So that's why I really appreciate what you guys do and what you guys bring to the to men and involved with my community as well. So, Mr. Samuels, give us your lowdown.
Yes, sir, man. My lowdown was down low, man. So down low, I was almost knocked out of that bad boy. Um,
Mhm.
like pretty much every guy that I know anyway, didn't have the Leave It to Beaver household growing up. Had a lot of things that I wish I would have got issued to me in my tool belt that I didn't, and had to learn a lot of lessons in life kind of the hard way. Um, and for me that hard way journey looked like a 30-year addiction to pornography. And when I say addiction, I'm not talking about consumption. I'm talking about addiction. I'm talking about controlling every aspect of my life, career, personal life, relationships, all those kinds of things. It was not recreational by far on my part. Um, and in that journey, man, I lost a career, lost two marriages. I wish I would have had a divorce advocate back then, man. I wish where were you, man, when I was getting kicked in the mouth, man, by this divorce process, especially the first time. The second time, I was a little bit smarter, um, but the first time it was god awful, man. It was ugly and ridiculous. Like I said, I wish I would have had somebody like you and your community around back then, man, because there's so much that I could have learned through that whole process, man. And if nothing else, just the support, man. So, the guys that are part of your community, Ryan and Zach just joining in, man, in your community, you guys are in the right place. And I know this guy Jude personally, and there's not too many more rock solid guys that I can, that I can associate with. And so yeah, so through that rock bottom kind of journey, and in that moment, I really thought that my life wasn't living, and people around me would be happier if I was gone. And so I got to that crossroad in life, and thankfully and obviously I didn't go through with that. But that was when my pain met my purpose, and that was when a whole lot of things changed for me in my life. And first of all, I realized that I wasn't alone, and that in order for me to finally kill this dragon, I had to learn the dragon, not just ride the dragon, right? And so I learned the dragon. I learned what I was getting from it that caught me in true addiction. And then I reverse engineered it and figured out how to get those things in natural, wholesome, and uplifting, positive ways. And so I started teaching that to men, and that opened up the doors to author, that opened up the doors to coach, that opened up a whole lot of doors. But the biggest door it opened up was to actually experience relationship, experience the thing I was looking for, which was true intimacy. Intimacy is greater than sexuality. But I got to experience that, and I still get to experience that. Now I get to enjoy life with friends, with guy friends, like I never could before. I don't live isolated like I used to, and again, one thing led to another, and now we're doing radio podcasts on top of everything else, and now we're branching out to doing things like the summit. And so, like I said, through all of that whole thing, my biggest takeaway is that now I get to live life with great guys like you two, or at least like you, Jude.
Yeah.
He gets tired of me.
Jason, I
I know
know
he
Oh,
does.
Jason.
Jason's got we play
Well,
golf every weekend, but
well, you got to have a brains and a good looking, so you got to
well,
kind of balance that
exactly,
out, right? So
exactly. And so
that's
I
all right.
obviously
So you
played
can
my
be
role
If
well.
we can find his brains, we would have the perfect combination.
That's fair.
Well,
That's
so
fair.
Kirk, I appreciate your authenticity and sharing about your background, and I want to point out a couple of things because a lot of guys listening right now are in an immense amount of pain, and you've experienced that not once but twice. So I guess that makes you a pro, but you've also just described what I try to give hope for, which is a life 2.0 after divorce and after going through those difficulties and the pain and the chaos and the trials and the tribulations and like all the stuff that goes through it, that you actually can have an even better life than you even imagine. And I know for me, when I was going through my divorce, that was it. Like I had created the life I thought, had the house, had the job, had the cars, had the kids, had like was involved in community, like had everything that I had planned, I had designed, I had executed on, except the marriage was shit, right? And then it all fell apart, which then just decimated me. So I never thought like what you described life after could be better. So I want to point that out to guys because it's been a theme now that I've heard you say, Chris say last week, Zach say the week before, that your life is going to be more amazing than you can possibly have even imagined after the fact. And then you're also remarried, so
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah, man. Just here this last November, what were we at, like 7, 8 months ago? Man, I mean, man, a fantastic woman. Like I could never have imagined that I would meet someone, let alone get to marry somebody that gets me and that gets it and is the zig to my zag. Man. Man, we're great together, and she's patient, she's tolerant. I mean, we have complete intimacy, man. We're open, we're vulnerable. I mean, she knows all my ins and outs, and she has the key to my treasure chest, and she values that. And so, absolutely, I mean, have I been able to experience the intimacy I've always wanted in every kind of way, and that's just one other way that I get to experience that.
Yeah, that's phenomenal and that's amazing. And I think that stems from your authenticity, your ability to be open and to share and to be vulnerable. Like that's huge. That's huge with in life in general, but in a romantic relationship. So way to go, my friend.
Yeah, good stuff, man. Good stuff. And it all starts with learning the lessons. Had I learned, or had I looked into the first divorce and learned some stuff, I probably wouldn't have experienced the second divorce, and vice versa. And so, the key to that hope, I believe, on the other side of divorce, going through that divorce process, is what can I take away from that? What is my alchemy
Mhm.
from that situation? There is something to take away. There's something to learn. It's going to be painful. Every lesson that you learn in life is going to cost you something. And so,
Yeah.
this is probably gonna cost you some money, pain, heartache, friends, family. It may even cost you a relationship with kids, but learn something from that, man, and take something away and allow it to make you better tomorrow than you were yesterday.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And that was also something I didn't do immediately. Didn't do that self reflection until I had uh, multiple failed relationships after that, and then had to say, hey, there seems to be a common denominator, And that would be me. So maybe we need to stop dating here for a little while and start figuring some of my own stuff out. And so, that's good advice as well. While you're in this period, there's so much, and that's overwhelming as it is. But if you can take the time, take a step back, take that in, and then, like you said, sort through it, work backwards, whatever method that you're going to utilize in order to then start getting the tools and learning the skills that you need to have a healthier, a better functioning relationship in the future. That is just the absolute way to go.
Yeah, you just basically nailed it right on the head. For the reason I never got divorced, because I never got married, because I watched both my parents go through several marriages. And in my mind, I remember having a conversation as a teenage kid to myself, like, well, they both got married in their early 20s. They both got divorced. They both got remarried in their mid 30s. Maybe I'll skip that first part and try to grow up. And then, of course, mid 30s comes around and I'm trying to have relationships with no education, no idea what I'm doing. Then I had that same moment. I first got into personal development and was like, oh, I'm the common denominator in all this craziness. So maybe I need to fix me and work on me. And then I went on this 10 plus year journey of doing it. And then Kirk and I got the show. And I think a lot of what we talk about is a part of that journey and trying to save guys time, because we've been there, we've done that. And we're hoping that we can save you some potholes and falling down into the crevasse of isolation and loneliness and addiction because you don't have the tools or don't have an outlet. So we share the things that worked for us. And a lot of times we get very vulnerable and share the things that didn't work, just so the guys can know that they're not alone, because the only difference between any man out on earth is time and circumstance. Men go through the same things, just depends on when and where.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you brought up also another good point, which is childhood experiences and what we see and what's modeled for us. And a lot of times the stuff that we bring into our adult life and our romantic adult relationships and marriages, we just didn't even know. Like I've boggled my mind. I've had therapy. I never remembered the time where I woke up in the morning and chose to be codependent from then on. Right? Like I never made that choice. I'm going to be codependent and not have any boundaries and just continue to give love and to look for love. And like, I never did that. Right. And so many times guys show up in the midst of a divorce and they're just beating themselves up like, I should have done more. And that was my philosophy. I could just love through it. Love's going to conquer all. I had parents that were divorced too. I was never going to get divorced because love was going to do that. And so that was just my programming from that. So guys that are listening, it's okay. It's okay to have this stuff. It's okay to talk about our shortcomings, our addictions, our codependencies, all, whatever it is that we've experienced, because oftentimes it's not our fault in the way that we got programmed. Now that we're aware of it, now that we're experiencing something like a divorce that's breaking us open or shining, or putting a mirror up in front of us, then it's incumbent upon us to really start to do that work, because now we know and we don't have an excuse.
Yeah, and I kind of fall on the opposite end of the spectrum. I became hyper independent because both my parents were kind of, they were busy military people, and I was the only child for the first 10 years and was basically a latchkey kid from like 5-6 years on. And they didn't have the emotional training to be emotionally sensitive, and so I dealt with emotional neglect, but didn't know it until literally one day I was doing one of these stupid Facebook or YouTube whatever questions, like, did you deal with this? If you have these symptoms, it's like, oh, check. Okay. I dealt with emotional neglect. That's why I stay hyper independent. I stay isolated as a form of protection. But until you have that awareness, you can do nothing with it. You're just going to continue on that hamster wheel. And so talking about these things, and this even slides in a little bit into my talk for the summit about who do you think you are and how's that working for you? Because we get into this identity that we didn't even give ourselves. So you talk about that childhood experience.
Right.
You talk about my name, my nationality, my race. These were just given to me. So we the first 4 years of our life, we learned 50% of who we are. Language, culture, how to interact with people. And so this just becomes an identity, but almost never until crisis like death, divorce, job loss, something like that, do we stop to question that identity and go, well, is this really working for me? And this is kind of the gist of my talk, is that it's time for us as men to really take an accounting of what we identify as and find out if that's working for us or not, and then have some tools how to change those things and become the person we want to be versus the person we've been that may not be working for us.
Right. So your talk is called "Who Do You Think You Are and How Is That Working for You?" And so, that's interesting, because what you say is interesting, because there's so much noise out there right now in oh, he's this or she's that, and it's like everybody wants to put somebody neatly in a box. You scratch the surface on any one of us, and none of us fit neatly into any single box. And so when you talk with your talk about who do you think you are, and then learning that program, so or learning where that came from, and what where did that come from, and why do you believe it? Like, is that something that you're gonna be talking about? Is like how to I analyze how we come up with this this identity, if you will, of who we are.
Yeah, we're definitely going to dive into kind of where it comes from, and then tricks and tips, and just a way of peeling back the layers. Because a lot of times what we find is there's layers upon layers over that inner child that are screaming for love and support, that wants to be seen. That's where that intimacy comes from. That's where that being able to love and accept love comes from, is from uncovering that inner child. And so many times that's covered up in all those layers of be this, do that, don't do this, don't do that, be who I want you to be, not who you are. And so peeling back these layers, and a lot of times when we do, we realize that we've been playing this role out of survival and self-protection that isn't even who we are. And until we uncover that and question that, we can't become the person we want to be or that we were meant to be, because we're continuing to play this role out of survival. Like,
Right.
Using addictions and coping mechanisms is a survival mechanism based on inner child wounding. But if we don't question it, if we don't look at it, if we don't start peeling back the layers, then you're never going to get back down to that core to realize that it may have been a small thing that started this train rolling, but you didn't have the skills as a small child to deal with it. So it gets covered up, and then it turns into, it's like the little piece of sand in the oyster. It turns into this big hard ball that we call pearl. But once you get down through the layers, you realize, oh, well, I can deal with that now. I'm an adult.
Right.
But that small inner child of you doesn't know anything about that.
Yeah. So you're gonna be going deep. You're gonna be going
Pretty
deep in your talk for sure, because this stuff then, and I'm gonna use the example from my life, is the codependency, and well, actually, I'll get to that in 1 minute. I often will tell people, when I'm coaching guys that might have an addiction while they're going through this, and obviously that's something they need to work on overcoming before they can really start to make some significant progress in whatever direction they're wanting to do. But they're often surprised when I'll say, your addiction wasn't necessarily bad. Whereas humans, we adapt, and that was something that you adapted in your life in order to survive, and maybe even just to live, depending on what your childhood was like, or what experiences, or if you had trauma, or if there was abuse, that may have saved your life. And sometimes they're like, why, there's nothing good about my addiction. I'm like, not necessarily. You adapted that for a reason in your life, and now, and while it's not working now for you, it has helped you in whatever part of your life that you need to do that. So I also want guys listening to that might be going through some of those channels to not, because there's a lot of shame in that, right? There's a lot of shame when you talk about, hey, I was addicted to porn or alcohol, or I was codependent, or whatever. Like,
or all the above.
Yeah. Or yeah. Like, I've tried a lot of stuff, right? Like, I have not discriminated against one another, or I just haven't picked one, whatever you want to say, right? So then mine, like, was codependency. And like I said, I never picked that, but it was just an adaptation in order in my case, would make my mom happy, right? And get through that childhood until I could get out. But then I got out, and I didn't know any different way. And then I carried that into my romantic relationships, and wow, was that a freaking mess?
Yeah, a lot of times addictions and coping mechanisms are like crutches. You've been injured, you've been traumatized, and you need something to get you through there. And then sometimes you get used to those crutches and you don't put them down. But it's a part of asking those questions and shifting that identity. Because anytime we change our identity, because I'm sure if Kirk was going to talk about it, he changed his whole identity from that rock bottom moment to dropping, porn addiction and all the things to get to this place of being a healthy man, doing the work, to teaching other people. But we have to shift that identity. And for you guys in Divorce Advocates group, there comes a time where sometimes you have to shift your identity from husband to father, or husband to single. Like, you have to shift that identity, and sometimes that's where the shame comes from. But when you can question that and let those things go and realize this is not who I am, this is a role I play. We just talked about the roles you play the last episode on our show. And one of the things where that came from was I watched a TikTok video where a lady was like, what was that light switch moment that really changed your life? And this guy told the story of going to a therapist, and the therapist said, well, you seem like a very well-adjusted guy. Why are you here? He's like, well, I'm a great father, I'm a great employee, or I'm a good father, a good employee, a good husband, a good friend, and I want to be better in those things. And she was like, okay, well, you're a father to your kids, you're a husband to your wife, you're an employee to your boss, and you're a friend to your friends. So who are you for yourself? And sometimes we need to get back, use these moments, like Kirk was saying, use these moments as a spotlight to look at and investigate, who am I for myself? Who have I been being? And is that working for me? How can I shift that to become the person I want to be and get back to me and create that foundation?
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's shift a little bit here, Kirk. We brought up the addiction thing, and your talk is on sexual sovereignty. And wow, I mean, that's a deep topic, but also something that's intertwined in all of what we were just talking about with Jason and his talk too. Maybe first you can define for us what sexual sovereignty is, and then we can dive a little more specifically into your talk.
Man, that's a great question as to what that is. No, to me, the notion or the concept, the dots connect for me in terms of what is and when I say, even connecting with the whole identity thing that you all were talking about, to my sexuality, I'm not talking about sexual orientation. And when we say sexual identity in our culture, that's normally where people go. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, do you see yourself as the king of your ding-a-ling? Right? I just made that up. I might coin that.
That's a good one.
I might coin that for next week.
Keep that one.
I don't know where that came from, but I might drop that in there.
There's so many places with that, and it's a family show, so we're just going to leave it at that.
But seriously, as men, if you better answer that question, because there's so much in our culture that's coming after that part of us to gain control over every other part of us. That seems to be kind of the entry point. When you look at like malware on computers, they're always looking for soft entry points into different networks and different systems and all those kinds of things. And so our sexuality, we're so sexually wired as men that is really the core, at the core of a lot of our identity and what we see ourselves and how we see ourselves. And so we better be able to answer that question as men. Here, even in your community, man, it's 7 out of 10 divorces involve somebody with a porn problem, right? I mean, so it's, and I'm not even honing on just the idea of pornography being kind of the thing. I mean, it's like in our culture, it just is what it is. You ask the fish, how's the water? The fish says, what water? Right. And so, I'm not even going to dumb it down to, okay, let's harp on porn, because there's a lot of shame in that. That's one of the things we don't do as a spectator sport. If you're an alcoholic, you can go to the bar and you can get drunk. If you're a crack addict, you can go to the crack house, and, that can be a team sport to some degree. But we don't normally say, hey, let's all sit around and look at my phone or look at my laptop and let's porn out for 4 or 5 hours together. That's not a thing. It drives us into our shadowy places, into our caves, because of the connection with our identity. So in that area of who we are in terms of our sexuality, if we don't have that identity rock solid in who we are in that, am I in charge of that? Am I in control of that? Am I king of that kingdom? If I'm not king of that kingdom, you better believe that there's, and again, as I sit here, I'm like, okay, dots just got connected. There is a mistress that's coming in, that's knocking at one of the gates, one of the doors to the walls of your kingdom, and she's
Yeah.
trying to get in there somewhere. And once she gets in, she's going to ruin everything you have. She's a succubus. She's going to come in and destroy everything you have, whether she's, some lady at the office who sees your wedding ring and, she's like, okay, that's desirable. I want some of that. Whether she's a virtual mistress online, whether she's some chick on Match.com that just wants a free dinner tonight, right? I mean, if we're not king of if we don't see our seed as valuable, then we'll just spread that thing anywhere instead of the garden in which it was meant to be planted. So us as
Yeah.
men, we need to lead with the identity in that. And again, taking morality off the table, right? I'm not telling anybody what's right or wrong. Man, if you want to do your thing, then cool. If you want to spread peanut butter all over yourself and go get freaky in your, whatever, that's your thing, right? I mean, I can be, trust me, like you, whatever. I
Kirk
ain't gonna
buys a
get into
lot of
my
peanut butter. He gets that Costco big one.
dude,
He goes all in.
Yeah.
yeah. And now that I'm married, it's sanctified, so I'm good to go. I can do it all. God blesses it. I can get as freaky as I want. Man. Anyhow,
Now
whatever.
he's got peanut
So,
butter and sprinkles.
man, we
All
use
right.
by the way, we use Nutella in my household. But anyhow,
Okay. My
but
dog
however
just heard
you
that and he got up. So anyway,
however
um,
you get down is how you get down. But in however you get down, make sure that you're driving that bus. Because I'm telling you, the greatest men in history have been brought down by women. And
yeah,
by, leading with that, trying to get in and get access. And so that's where I'm going after in this whole thing. Whatever you want to do, I'm not your daddy, I'm not your whoever to tell you what to do. But what I'm telling you from my experience, from the experience of a whole lot of men that I've worked with and coached and lived life with and all these other kind of things is she's knocking. She's whoever she is in some way, shape, or form, she's knocking at the door. And when us as men flip that switch, and when women aren't allowed to manipulate us so easily with sex and sexuality, then all of a sudden the game changes. All of a
yeah,
sudden, when you're in the dating market and you ain't impressed by titties and ass, then it's like, then all of a sudden they got to bring something. You got to
yeah,
bring something to this table. You can't tell me that you are the table. No, 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 no. You need to help set this thing. You need to help, make something to put on it. You need to do something because I'm not impressed by the low hanging fruit. The low hanging fruit is all the garbage. The sweetest fruit is at the top of the tree. And so if you want some of this, girl, you need to step up and earn it. So anyhow, a little bit of a tangent, but that's where I'm going with just in terms of the whole idea of sexual sovereignty and introducing who I'm going to call the IP mistress and how she's trying to get into everybody's life.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Well, and something important I think to point out also is that the porn, well, everything that you just described, whether it's porn or a mistress or whatever else, is a symptom, right? A symptom, kind of what going back to what Jason's talking about, which is your programming, what it is from your childhood, etc., that you're looking to satisfy through whatever you're seeking. And if you don't have that sovereignty over your sexuality or your mind and your thoughts and your actions and in your life, then you're going to be prone to a lot. I mean, we just leave
Yeah.
it at that a lot. I mean, it could
Yeah.
be, who knows? Who knows?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're gonna
So,
yeah.
pay. I mean, you're gonna pay if she
Yeah.
gets in. You're gonna pay one way or another. Trust me, bro. You're gonna and you might even pay with your life. But
yeah,
I mean, when that, and your community can relate, man. I mean, it ain't cheap to let her go. They say it's cheaper to keep her, but that's gonna cost you. Because even if y'all stay
yeah,
together, man, you still gonna have some stuff. So, if she gets in, she's gonna do some damage.
yeah. Well, and man, it's so sordid, right? Because for all of us, it's so different. For all of our experiences, when we started having sex, who we had sex with, what our parents' messages were to us about sex. Was it in marriage? Was it and in society and all the stuff that's getting bombarded, like like our kids are getting today, which wasn't necessarily the same as when we were younger. There's so much that goes into it. So that's a huge message. It's a huge message not only for us, us old guys, if you will, but for younger, young men that are either just starting to explore their sexuality or newly married, or getting into dating, like just starting to understand that is an incredibly important message. So if there's a message, because I know that part of this summit and part of what you guys are promoting is not only to get men to the summit, but to get young men and have men bringing their kids. If there's a message that you can share a little bit around that sexual sovereignty to the young men that listening, that they're going to come hear your talk, what would that be?
Yeah. The sooner you can grab a hold of that power, the better you'll be able to harness that through the rest of your life. If I was speaking to my son, who happens to be 30 years younger than me, he's 21, and man, I mean, I'm the type of dad. I literally took my son and one of his Navy buddies to Vegas for his 21st birthday, right? And so I'm all about the, hey man, you know, have some fun kind of thing, but at the same time, make sure you keep it in check. I give them two rules: don't get locked up and don't get nobody knocked up. And man, if you can get a hold of some of these principles and concepts when you're a young man, then you got all the upper hand for the rest of your life. I mean, then you can channel all of that into everything you are, and that connects directly to the whole idea of your mentality, how you see
Yeah.
yourself. Do I see myself as a king? Because if you do, you'll act like a king, and when you act like a king, the rest of the world will treat you like a king.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and if
And
you
let's
don't have that sexual sovereignty or that identity or the control over yourself and your mindset, then it's the tail wagging the dog. You're not in control. You're being wagged by these unconscious drives. So,
Right.
like to Kirk's point, I would love for young men to come in and start thinking about those things while they're still young versus being in their middle years going, oh, that's why that happened all those years.
And we're being
Yeah.
monetized. We're being made to be slaves. The sex and porn industry generates more revenue than all professional sports combined, and it's free to consume. If
Mhm.
if Bronco tickets were free, there'd probably be a packed stadium. Well, there's a packed stadium, and the Bronco tickets, start off at $75 or whatever. But we are being monetized by an industry that's profiting off of us just consuming at mass quantities, right? Every 24 hours, there's 48 hours of content uploaded to the internet. And so we're being reduced to the lowest common denominator as men, where we're just learning and being bred and being conditioned to just consume and consume and
Yeah.
consume. And we learn unhealthy intimacy habits. We learn unhealthy, relational coping habits. But at the core of it, we're being used as slaves, as pawn by an industry out there that's profiting ridiculous amounts of money off of us, just not valuing, that part of who we are.
So, without sharing too much about your talk and too many tips, give us one of how to at least start to break free from that mindset or from that grip or from that exposure to all of those things that you described.
Yeah. Well, full disclosure, I don't even have my talk kind of written yet, so I don't even know if I'm giving away nothing because I don't even know what bullet points I'm going to make. Um,
Okay.
but I think at the core of it, though, the one thing I would recommend to every guy is get into a circle group of other guys. Get
Yeah.
into some level of connection where you can relate and open up to other guys. There you begin to condition the heart and the soul of who you are as a man to be able to be open, to be able to be accepted. It takes a man to make a man, and it takes men, to develop a generation of men. So once we get around and share and connect with other guys, then we learn, to be honest, we learn intimacy. We learn
Yeah.
non-sexual intimacy. Like, I'm
Right.
fulfilled here. I don't need to go. I'm not empty. When I was strung out on my drug of choice, I was trying to fill a hole. And that hole was an intimacy hole that, quite honestly, now I find I get in other ways that I could that make all of that look like hot garbage. But at the core of it, I would recommend to every guy, man, get into a circle of guys. Doesn't have to be necessarily a ministry or a formal group. just a group of guys that you get together with, you hang out with, you socialize, you connect with. When you're going through stuff, you got guys that support you, and you can begin to open up and share life together. I would say that's one huge bullet point that I'll probably throw in there just because I just came up with it.
Yeah, no, I that is absolutely phenomenal advice because we get siloed and isolated in our lives, especially when we start to get married, have kids, have families, and kind of the dynamic of our society now is not that we have the families with families and grandfathers and kids and grandkids and working on the farm, and then you kind of had your male role models and men that you hung out with and uncles and the nephews and cousins and all that stuff that you were together, and then you had exactly what you talked about, which was that intimacy with other men. We don't have that anymore. And so that's one of the things I hear from guys a lot. Brian Peters, and I mentioned this when I was talking to Chris last week. Brian Peters, former Mr. Olympian, talked about how during his divorce he shut the blinds. He would just come home after work in the dark and just like isolate himself. He says the worst thing he could possibly do, but that's what we do, and it's counter to what we need to be doing in general, but also specifically during divorces. We need to be reaching out. We need to have those people around us. And then the other challenge during divorce, at least, is that the people that you might have had around you, which you probably experienced, Kirk, just go away. And it's because they don't know how to handle the situation, and they don't know how to figure out how to communicate their discomfort going through this with you. So they go away. So you got to find all new people, which is really hard because you're going through this hard thing already, and then you're having to try to be vulnerable with somebody that you don't know and a new group, et cetera. But it is absolutely positively imperative. And I know that in my adult life now that I got guys like you guys and Zach and M.E.N and the other guys in our community and all the other groups of Jeff and the others that do the work with men, man, it is so fulfilling to just we do our meeting the fourth Thursday of the month. Is just, I look forward to it. Like, I'm going to get to see Kirk and Jason, and I know we're going to get to have some fun. We're going to talk, but we're also going to be able to share some important stuff. I'm going to get to hear, and I learn something every time we meet, and I learn something every time we talk, like today. And it's so important for guys to just continue to do that because the learning never ends. And then it just, and I wanted to define what you said. You get a leg up. Then what that leg up is, you're healthy and you're functioning, and you've got the ability to communicate and have good relationships and have a fulfilled life and all that. That's what stems from all that.
Yeah, when you go through these changes, a lot of times what tends to happen is you think your life's over because your community, your family has changed. But when we have a community of guys around us, we realize it's just a shift. Like, if this was your family and now you're divorced, now you're part of the divorced advocate community. And so it's just a shift. But when, like you're talking about the guy, when you isolate and you close the blinds and you go within, you're not healing. You're just burying. And that's what causes cancer and sickness and all these other different things, is burying those things. But just realizing that this is a stage of life. Everything goes in cycles, and you're just shifting community. But if we kept to the idea that community is not always family, but it's just the people around us, and we can develop a community like we've all done, coming together, that you can develop a healthy community. I mean, they say it takes a village to raise a child. I mean, what do you think it takes to raise a healthy man? Yeah. At least a community, if not more.
Yeah, for sure.
And the shifts go through our life. The guys in your community are going through that shift, going through a transition, and the transitions in life are some of the most key moments, some of the most key mile markers in your life. How did you make the transition from this to that? And so guys that are making the transition from being married to now being divorced, you need, back in the old day, we used to have vehicles where you had 3 pedals on the floor, right? And to get from one gear to the next, you had to push in that pedal on the left. That pedal on the left was the clutch. And guys going through, for guys going through, you need a clutch because you need to be able to transition from one gear to another. And this is completely unsolicited, but you're a clutch, man. I mean, you're a clutch. Like I said, I wish I would have known you or had a guy like you when I was going through that, man, because it's a hopeless feeling, man. And I mean, you're freaking broke. You're probably living somewhere where you never thought you'd be living. You got nothing. Your kids don't like you because they're hearing all this stuff about you from maybe mom or somebody else. I mean, and you don't know how to make this transition. And so having, coaching or just having a community or something like you offered, Jude, is huge because you got to be able to shift correctly as you transition from one part of life into the other.
Dude, that was so well said, and I think we just end it right there because I that was awesome. Kirk, Jason, I sincerely appreciate, and not to make this too much of a love fest, but you guys do such awesome work, and I've got to see firsthand and spend time with you, and I sincerely appreciate the work you do with and for men and the quality of men that you are and the conversations you're putting out there and the healing that you're bringing to people and to the world. And so kudos to you guys. How can the listeners connect with you guys individually? Because I know you each individually do some of your own work, but also with the Mad Men of Masculinity.
Go for it.
Yeah, we both have our own websites. I'm KirkMSamuels.com. He's JasonBKendrick.com. Hence why we put those up on the screen there, I think. But we're pretty easy to get a hold of, pretty easy to find if you Google either one of us, search either one of us. And then our show is madmenradio.com. It's the website where you can find that and find kind of how to get a hold of us and all that. We're pretty easy to find.
Yeah, and if you go
And
on
then
to
if you ever watch us online, if you ever watch us on Facebook or YouTube, if you hate everything about us, then make sure you hit the like button and put a lot of comments down there. It will never show up in your timeline again.
Yeah. Make sure you write a diatribe and a whole paragraph about how much you don't agree with us. We will appreciate it, and we'll definitely take everything you say to heart. But yeah, make sure you go to
you'll never
Mad
see
Men
us in your timeline
Radio.
again after that.
Yeah, and you can go to YouTube and onto Spotify and to Apple Podcasts and go Mad Men Radio or Mad Men of Masculinity. You'll find us. Go to either our websites, but also make sure you go to menempowerment.net. And if you're here August 24th, make sure you click the tickets. And the nice thing is, Kirk is such a good giving guy that he did interviews with every one of the speakers. So you can click on our names on menempowerment.net and get a little tidbit, a little snippet of what the talk is, so you can get a flavor of what you're going to get that day. And so you know what you're stepping into. But remember, this is not about an agenda. No religion, no politics, no salesman, nothing like that. If you want to buy our books, great. We're not going to ask you to. But it's really about you guys coming together, because the magic of these events is the guy sitting next to you. God and the universe work in mysterious ways, and you may have a problem, you may have a goal, you may have a wish, and that guy sitting next to you may have been placed there divinely for you to meet them. So it's not just about you coming to hear us. It's about you coming to make community and meet guys that you're sitting right next to in that space.
Absolutely. So
There's even discounted tickets for teens. If you want to bring your teen son, there's a discounted ticket price on the checkout page for a teen son. All the ticket sales, everything is going to a men's nonprofit. So none of us are getting paid for this. Matter of fact, we all put money in.
We're all paying for it.
And so continental breakfast is going to be included, all that kind of good stuff, man.
Awesome. Yeah. So menempowerment.net. Check it out. The date is August 24th, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at the Schoolhouse Theater in Parker, Colorado. Jason, Kirk, thanks so much for being here. Sincerely appreciate it. Have an awesome week, everybody listening, and God bless.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Yes, sir. Boom. Yeah. How do you like this app? Really? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm. Yep. Yep. You're right. Cool. Yeah, for real. I see 77%. I see. Yeah. Because I'm telling you, man. No, actually, my phone is probably the best thing around here, except for my work laptop, as far as stability. Um, but yeah, I didn't want to use my garbage laptop. That bad boy. I would imagine it doesn't save it locally here, so it's got to be on their server. On my phone? Oh, wow. Wow, that's interesting. Well, I definitely won't. I won't drop it. I won't. I had to. I had to. Of course, yours say 0% on my side. No, I'm on Wi-Fi. Yeah, both of yours say zero on my side, so maybe it goes down to zero. Yeah, I have a feeling it's going down to zero. Uh, Probably not. Probably Wi-Fi is probably going to be the best as far as speed, but you know, anyhow, it's all good. It's all good. Although ooh, wait, no, thank you. Yeah. Later. Yep, you got it, man. I'm just gonna stand up and walk around. I'm gonna open my window, man. I didn't turn my AC on today, it's been raining and stuff, so I had to close the window. But now I'm sitting here just freaking baking. Um, but man, this that's some pretty good clouds in here, man. We've been getting raining off and on all day. Dude, I need to get in on that, man. That's all I've been hearing about lately is pickleball. Everybody's playing pickleball. Is it? That's all I've been hearing about, man. Everybody playing pickleball. So, you hear a wind all of a sudden? Going up to I think it's going down to zero, man, because yours says 0%. I think it's going down to zero. Maybe that's like maybe that's how much percent they have done. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I agree. Going down. Yeah, it's at 64. I think it's going down to zero. I think it's going down to zero. That's down to 60. Yeah, that's down to 64. No, I don't. I mean, I can just sit here and let it rock and roll. I can just, I mean, I can just let it roll if you want. I'll turn off my Bluetooth. Um, but yeah, All right. If it's done and I come back and you're gone. All right. Your picture is frozen on my side. When I hit those icons at the bottom of the screen, they just turn gray and stay there. So I don't know. I'd be shocked if they did, man. I'd be shocked if like that wasn't like in real time, you know, captured somewhere. Okay, I won't delete that. I'll wait till you say we're good to go. All right, man. See ya. Shit, you still there? I'm trying to hit the leave button and it won't even do that. Can you hear me? I hit kind of like my backup button. And now it says connecting you to the studio. Hmm.
To hear the rest of this episode and access the corresponding resources, visit thedivorcedadvocate.com and become a member of our community. It's free to join and will provide you with the resources you deserve as a divorced or divorcing dad. Thank you for listening. God bless, and I'll talk with you next week.